Mad Max is a very iconic character. How did this resonate with you, and how did you make it your own?
For me, the stunt double, or for Tom?
I mean, yes, I'm sorry, for Tom.
How did I make Mad Max my own? I don't. That's a difficult question, because ultimately, obviously, Mad Max is synonymous with Mel Gibson, and he is Max, and that's it. There's no grey area there for me. So initially, I was not only really excited to play. I would be offered the opportunity to play Mad Max in Fury Road by George Miller, but I was a little bit intimidated by having to step into a pre-existing iconic character as the new boy, as it were. So I did have thoughts of trying to make it my own, but that's not, I don't think, the right way of approaching something like this. So what I realised was that actually George Miller created the world of Mad Max and the apocalyptic landscape that Mad Max is synonymous with, and ultimately he's George's character. So all the answers lay really with George and what he wanted me to do with it to transmute his vision. For this revisit to the world. Since the last 37 years of meditation on Mad Max for George. If that makes sense.
Now, this wall-to-wall action, and there's a lot of physicality to this role. How did you prepare for it, or did you have to do a lot of preparation for it?
I mean, you've always got to be sort of physically fit and adaptable to whatever the environment is that you're going into as a performer, to get the best out of yourself and to be of most use to the, as an asset to the production. On this one, it was very methodical in many ways, because it's a live action movies, and some of the, well, most of, if not all of it, is a very ambitious succession of very difficult stunts, including vehicles and stuntmen and characters, which have to be seamlessly cohesive in a narrative form on the screen as a movie. So, because there was no CGI or face replacement and stuff like that, it had to be very carefully threaded together. So Jacob and I both had a very sort of harmonious departmental relationship to create a fully dimensional Max, which you couldn't, as an audience member, see who was who, when, and where, if that makes sense, during the film. So that's how we prepared. Really, was just it was an interdepartmental puzzle, and I was sort of like the acting department, if that makes sense, and right. Jacob was
right.
physical.
So you did some of the stunts?
Of course, there was a.
Jacob, you did.
Yeah, he had no choice really about that. We threw him in as much as possible, and it is our job as stunt doubles to map out the scene and do the rehearsals, but then to get the actor in as much as possible. And Tom's very capable of doing most of it himself, and yeah, like I said, didn't have much choice in the matter.
So was it this film relies heavily, I believe, on not so much dialogue, but more like even just glances and sometimes even silence. Was that a challenge to play that character?
Not really, no. I mean, you don't. I don't think when to tell a story in physical action is one has to have a clear arc of what it is that you're trying to achieve as when you're playing a character. So what happens to a character along their journey, and where do they end up? And we have, as actors, we have the ability to see behind the curtain and know where our character's going to end up. So you're just joining the dots. In fact, not speaking is a lot easier than speaking in many ways, especially with something like this where things are happening to you and you're just reacting to an environment and a landscape which is fully articulated. So no, that's not difficult. And I think it's what George has done is made a world which is incredibly, from design right through to mythology and asset-wise, very complex, a very complex beast. He's simplified that, and the lack of dialogue, actually is part of that simplification process. But it was a massive beast to as it were, to wrangle into creating this relentless, spectacular, epic live-action movie that is Mad Max Fury Road.
Now, talk about Mad Max's relationship with Furiosa. Is she sort of a female version of Mad Max?
Yeah, absolutely. I think again, George is never is kind of restless and his imagination is so vast that it was only logical that since Thunderdome, he's obviously developed and grown the world of the apocalyptic landscape, for want of a better terminology, and the characters and the tribes within that world. And it's, I think, very brave of him to take the Mad Max character that everybody knows synonymously with Mel Gibson, but that world, and develop a new character who's a protagonist and a female Mad Max, as you say, in her own right. And I mean, and the clue is in the title. It's Fury Road, and she's called Furiosa. And Mad Max is definitely reintroduced in this movie to a new generation, but also a new character as well. And we follow her, and I think it's brilliant that actually there's a female lead, you know, played and articulated so beautifully by Charlize Theron, who's arguably one of the finest character actors we've got in our generation, as well as one of the most exquisitely beautiful women on the planet, you know, with such range to play that part as well. So he's given you two Mad Maxes technically for this generation, and one of them is Furiosa, or the counterpart to Mel's Max, as it were.
Now, this being a fresh take on Mad Max, do you feel that the fans will be at home, the fans of the previous Mad Max films will be at home with this version?
I hope they will be. You know, I think it's inevitable that, you know, with anything like books translating to film, or, you know, old reinventions of already, you know, much loved characters being recreated or redone, there's always going to be people who harbour feelings towards the latter or the older or the original, and rightly so. That's the legitimate, you know, it's a legitimate concern. But at the same time, this is the man that created Mad Max in the first place, and it's a further, you know, it's a further advancement of his work and meditation on the character that he's created. So it's of his mind. So why shouldn't he be allowed to continue to pioneer within that world? You know, just because, you know, he's decided to move forward with a new cast and a new selection of characters. There's no difference in the evolution of that man, George Miller's mind and his world. So they're kind of redundant to, you know, that is a period in time. It continues. You know, it's not like somebody new came in and decided to remake Mad Max. This is a continuation of George's work.